Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dano, aka Daniela, and wanted to make a video responding to a comment that someone had made to on Chrissie's video about the whole situation with Simone Biles and how she wanted Zendaya, who is a biracial chick, a mulatta or a mulatto female, to portray her if somebody were to make like a biop or a biopic about her. I agree with Chrissy. It is utterly ridiculous that Simone Biles, being a dark skinned black woman, a dark skinned African American woman, to have a mulatto African American woman to play her. Now, one thing that I do disagree with Chrissy and a lot of other people in the pro black community is that I do see biracial people, mulattoes, as being African American, because African American isn't a race, is an ethnic group. And the ethnic group is more, the definition of an ethnic group is more difficult to explain. It's more complex than just race. It also embodies culture, um, because it's the same thing with Latino or Latino. Um, Latino isn't just a race. There's a bunch of different races in Latino. So there are blacks. Sorry, I'm just a little tired. I got a headache. There are white Latinos. There are mestizos. There are all type of mixes of Latinos. So you can't just say, that being an African American is one race. I believe that even a mulatto or a biracial person who has black heritage, one black parent and one other parent can be considered African American, because it's an ethnic group and a cultural thing more than it is a racial thing. Yes, race has to do with it, but not as much as you would think, because a lot of African American people have mixed heritage. Almost all, I think it's like 95% of African Americans have non-black heritage. So that's the only disagreement I have with her. But other than that, I totally agree with how utterly ridiculous it is of Simone Biles having someone who looks absolutely nothing like her to portray her in a biopic. To me, that screams insecurity and self-hate. And you can tell that Simone Biles is one of those females who, how can I say, probably has mostly white friends and will probably most likely marry a non-black man, because you see during the Olympics how she was so into the Brazilian dude. Now, don't get me wrong, I really don't have a problem with her. If she were to get with that Brazilian guy, I wouldn't really have a problem with it. But I mean, because a lot of Brazilians have African heritage, so I mean, it's not too bad. It's not as bad as getting with someone uh, who is basically an Anglo or completely of European heritage. Because, like I said, a lot of Brazilians have African heritage. I was just talking to a Brazilian dude earlier this week who was of African heritage, and he had white heritage, of course, because most of them are mixed. And so are a lot of African Americans. I'm not taking away from our blackness at all. A lot of African Americans are mixed, but to a less extent. Latin America is much more extreme with their mixtures and stuff like that. But for Simone Biles to have a biracial woman to play her is absolutely ludicrous. And she's just feeding into that Hollywood system that does not like to cast black women in black women roles. Now, on that subject about casting and how they don't cast black women, dark skinned black women, in a lot of major roles, I wanted to respond to this comment that this dude made. Now, there's this dude named Strange Fruit. I think it's a guy. It could be a female. He or she said, "I don't recall Denzel getting as much grief when it was announced that he would play Malcolm X." Well, first of all, we know that the internet harbors a lot of drama. We didn't have the internet back in the 90s when, well, we didn't have the internet like how we do and all this social media like we do today. Back in the 90s, we didn't have that at all. So that's why there wasn't so much drama and grief, because we know the internet brings a lot of drama and grief. grief. Sorry. Like I said, I got a headache, so I'm a little tired. But also, this is the thing, you know. In one of the comments, he was basically saying, let me see if I can find it. So he said, "You seem to, you seem rather ignorant, to be honest. Dark-skinned Denzel. Come on, people. Let's move past the 1990s, 1980s, and early 2000s where we said dark-skinned." I even told him in the comment when I responded that dark-skinned refers to the past. When you put an ED at the end, it refers to something that happened to the past and something that has been changed in the present. So Denzel Washington, he is still dark-skinned. So you can't say dark-skinned Denzel because he is still dark-skinned. And Malcolm X, if he were still alive, he would still be light-skinned. So, yeah. So, anyways, he said dark-skinned Denzel received little to no grief for portraying a red-headed, light-skinned man. Denzel put it off, although looking nothing like Malcolm. Well, see, this is the problem. The reason why Denzel didn't get as much grief, and the reason why I think these are two different things, because he'll probably say like, "Oh, well, a dark-skinned black man portraying a light-skinned black man is the same thing as light-skinned black women portraying dark-skinned black women in dark-skinned black women roles." That's not the same thing. The reason why I use the same argument with white people when they talk about black people complaining about non-blacks playing black roles. You know, when they bring up the whole thing about, the Human Torch, how he's portrayed by a black man, and other black actors that get white actors' role, like James Bond, how they wanted Elba Idris to play the new James Bond. A lot of people are upset about that. The difference is that you don't see too many dark-skinned black men taking mulatto roles. You don't see too many mulatto black men taking dark-skinned black men's roles. You don't see that. But more than often, usually most of the times, you see a lot of light-skinned black women or biracial mulatto women taking the roles of dark-skinned women. That's why there's a big difference, because almost all the time in Hollywood, the black standard of beauty is derived from mixed mulatto beauty. For some reason in Hollywood, they set the standard for black beauty. It's never dark-skinned black women. Black women are never portrayed properly in Hollywood. So that's why there's a big difference. Excuse me. Black men are portrayed. We're fully portrayed in Hollywood. I mean, not as well as we should be, because we play a lot of the stereotypical roles, but we are not underrepresented in Hollywood like black women are. So that is the big difference. So I would definitely love to see this guy respond to what I have to say, because that's the big difference. Black women are totally underrepresented in media, period. In Hollywood, in the television shows, in music, and in video games. Yes, video games too, because it's the same thing. We have the same colorism issue in video games. You see it all the time where dark-skinned characters, because there was a character from, I think it's called, it's one of those old PlayStation fighting games. Art of Fight? No, not Art of Fight. That's super old. I forget what it's called, but one of the female characters went from being a dark-skinned black woman to a light-skinned black woman. There's even a rumor that Laura from Street Fighter was originally supposed to be dark-skinned because her brother was dark-skinned. Now he's light-skinned. You know, so this happens a lot even in video games. You know, look at another person from Street Fighter. I can't remember her name, but the sister I think she's from like Central or South Africa, and she's tall. She's, tall, dark-skinned brown woman with straight white hair and blue eyes. You know, so we're always misrepresented. You know, and our women are misrepresented more in Hollywood and throughout all media, because usually when they cast dark-skinned black women, when they do, even though it's not very often, because most of the times we see dark-skinned black women, those aren't usually in black-made movies produced and directed by black people. But a lot of the big Hollywood movies with big Hollywood roles, the so-called African-American female role is usually casted, usually a biracial woman is being casted as that black woman, the woman who is supposed to represent African American women. You know what I'm saying? That's the big problem that we have here in the United States. You know, this whole colorism thing, and people try to say, "Oh, you black people complaining." No, it's not us who are doing that. But really, I think our only solution is to, you know, like I believe our solution is just in society. Period, is solidarity. We need to be independent, do our own thing. The only way we're going to be happy with, you know, how we are portrayed in the media is if we do it ourselves, because they're, for the most part, white people are our enemy, and they are not going to portray us properly. You know, so anyways, to the strange fruit, that is the difference. You know, the difference is that black women are underrepresented in Hollywood, period. I mean, we can barely get any damn you know, movies with big roles, you know, with big major roles, with black women playing those big major roles. I'm talking about dark-skinned black women, because I used the example. I used the example when I responded to him. I was like, okay, let's look at the past 2 Marvel movies. Let's look at X-Men, was it Apocalypse, and let's look at Captain America, Civil War. Let's look at both of those movies. Both of those movies had black characters. In Captain America, there was 2 black male characters. There was War Machine, who in the comic books and in the old cartoon in the 90s, he was a dark-skinned black man. In the movies, he is a dark-skinned black man. Well, in the first movie, Iron Man movie, he was actually a light-skinned black man. But anyways, but in the movies overall, in general, he's been portrayed accurately. I mean, maybe they need to get a little bit bigger dudes, because in the comic books, War Machine was much bigger. He was kind of buff. But at least they got somebody who fits his phenotype. You know what I'm saying? Even the same thing with Black Panther. They got a dark-skinned black man who fit the bill. But when it comes to Storm, they can never get a dark-skinned black woman to fill that role. Why? Why do they have so many problems getting a dark-skinned black actress to play a very powerful, if not one of the most powerful mutants in the X-Men universe? Storm is one of the strongest mutants out there. That's why she became one of the 4 horsemen for Apocalypse, because she was one of the strongest. Even though they don't portray her correctly in the movies anyways, because she's always super weak. But she's one of the strongest mutants out there. Yet she is never portrayed as a dark-skinned African American woman or African woman, because her parents, one of her parents is a dark-skinned black woman from Kenya. A dark-skinned black woman from Kenya, and her father is a dark-skinned African American man from America. So why is she being played by a actress who has a white mother and a black father? That makes absolutely no sense. Why is it like that only with black people roles? For the most part, especially black women roles, they are always being casted as light-skinned black women or biracial women. That's not fair. So that is a big difference. That doesn't happen too much with black men as it does with black women. It happens way more. So that is the big difference, and that's why I wanted to make this video, to respond to Strange Fruit. And and I just want to say shout out to the sister Chrissie. Keep doing what you're doing. You know, don't get discouraged by these swirlers out here, these bad wenches, these coon niggas out here, because there's a lot of these coon niggas out here who love them some damn white mommy, and all these damn black women out here who love these white daddies. Keep doing your thing. Keep coming out with the truth. Keep expressing your opinion on the matter, especially about these racial issues, because there's a lot of racial issues right now, a lot of racial tensions, and yeah, we're definitely in that time where it needs to be talked about, and people need to be bold and not afraid to talk about it. But yeah, that's basically all I have to say about this. Peace out, shalom, talk to you later.